Welcome to The Other Worlds, where we talk to authors of fantasy, supernatural, and paranormal stories. Let's open the portal and meet our guest. Hello, my name is Sandra Tan, and today I have the absolute honor of chatting with Andrea Stewart. I have been a fan ever since I read The Bone Shard Daughter, and it feels like just yesterday, but now we're into a whole new trilogy. Book two in that trilogy, The War Beyond, is coming out in just a matter of days. And we're going to chat about that book and more. Andrea was a born storyteller. She was dictating tales to her mom when she was just 3 years old. And despite that, she still wanted to be a dragon slayer. But that hasn't panned out, so she returned to her destiny. And thankfully, that means that we have plenty of great books to enjoy. Welcome to the Other Worlds, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandra.
It's so great to get a chance to chat. And on that note, like when you debuted with The Bone Char Daughter, which was book one of in the Drowning Empire trilogy, and here you are with the second book in another trilogy coming out. How does it feel to end one trilogy and move into a brand new one?
It's a lot of mixed feelings, I would say. Like on the one hand, it was a little bit sad to kind of to leave that world and those characters behind. Actually, commissioned this piece of art to remind myself of that world and what I was leaving behind. But it's also exciting because it's nice to build a new world. I love world building. That's like one of the things that I enjoy a lot about writing is creating an entirely new world, and also to follow these new characters. So it's sad, but it's happy, it's exciting. Uh, yeah, and I'm really enjoying right now, kind of bringing everything to a close. Again, it's mixed feelings where you it's nice to kind of get into that new story and to be closing it up, but at the same time, it's also like frustrating and difficult. So I I've been telling myself right now because right now, yes, the second book is coming out in this new trilogy, but I'm also finishing up writing the third book, which is it's weird to exist as a writer where you're kind of in the past and in the future simultaneously. But I keep telling myself I'm not doing another trilogy for a while. I'm not doing another trilogy. And yet I'm thinking about this new idea, which I'm like, okay, well, it can't be a standalone. Maybe it'll be a duology. I'm like, should it be a trilogy? So, so who knows? Who knows? But yeah, it's a lot of mixed feelings.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've been with these characters for quite some time, for many, many, many words, and then you're saying goodbye to them. So, like, I have to say, on that note, like from the Bone Shard series, which the Drowning Empire series, um, which character do you miss writing the most?
I would probably say Jovis just because I feel like there's a lot of myself in him where like he was very easy for me to write because he's got like the same kind of sense of humor that I do, and he thinks he is very funny, and if nobody is going to laugh at his jokes, he'll laugh at his own jokes, which is very much me. But he's also like he gets deeply frustrated with himself as well, which I feel constantly and consistently. So I definitely miss him. I miss Meffy. I like I think a lot about the characters that I think are gonna kind of continue on beyond the pages, like what they're doing and what they're up to. I don't think that I would ever write like a sequel or anything. I'm considering like a short story, because there is a character in a situation that I would like to explore a little bit more. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to think that I'm just kind of letting them have their own adventures now and letting other people imagine what's happening to them after the last page.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I actually wrote down and I was going to ask you how Jovis and Lynn are.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like I would hope that they are able to come back together. But there are like still threads left open-ended. I would think that she probably feels a responsibility to like find the rest of those swords and make sure that nobody gets their hands on them ever again. At the same time, I feel like Jovis is still in that process of coming back to himself. Uh, so I would think that they are still having adventures long after the pages are done, just because that's who they are. And there's a lot that they still want to get done and accomplish. I imagine that it would not be until they are very old that they finally decide to kind of lay down lay down their weapons and retire and relax. So I imagine that they're up to a lot more adventures after that trilogy.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if you get in touch with them, maybe their great, 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 great grandchild could, have to deal with those swords someday in a whole new
I mean, if I
scenario.
ever did return to that world, it would be much farther in the future, because I feel like I always like to explore these kinds of questions when I sit down and I write books. And a lot of the questions that I was dealing with when I was sitting down to write that trilogy is, if you have a rebellion and if you set up like a new system and everything, and maybe it's a really good system. I mean, well, with that trilogy, it was more like if we replace the despot with somebody who is like quote unquote good, like what happens after that? And for another another book in that world, I think I would want to explore the question of what happens with those systems as you move forward. It's like in a social context, in a technological context, because there is no system that I think can be resilient through that. You have to find ways to change and move forward. However, I do think that it is human nature to kind of put on a pedestal whatever it is that we have created in the past that maybe worked well in the past, and to cling to those things rather than to provide for some flexibility. So I think that would be a question that I would be interested in exploring is how do you move forward from that and from that legacy, and how do you honor that legacy while at the same time acknowledging that it is maybe not what is needed in this world anymore. So it would have to be much farther in the future. And I think that there would be space to explore a lot of that just because in this world there are already a lot of differences between the people that exist there. There are people that have power, more power than other people. And I think as soon as you have that kind of inequity, which is always going to exist, you have to figure out how to handle that and how to deal with that in a way that creates the least suffering, really. I don't think that we can look at things as how do we make things the most fair. And I think we should look to that, but I don't think that it is completely possible to make everything 100% fair for everyone. I think maybe what they should be looking at is how do we create the least amount of suffering? Anyways, this is like these are the thoughts that are always swirling in my head, and I really like to explore these things through story because I feel that I never completely understand them, and I don't think there is any one true answer to any of these kinds of questions, but I feel like through these stories I can understand them better and maybe help others understand them better as well.
I think, I mean, in one of the interviews that you did that I read, and I can't remember which one, I apologize, but you mentioned that. fantasy like does not have to be a mirror to the issues in our world, but that it is a good mirror when it's used to examine things. And I've been thinking about that a lot as I've been reading The War Beyond because there are in its own way, there are a lot of politics in this book. There's a lot of politics in the series in the sense that people have their own different philosophies, and some people have decided that they feel they have the right and the authority that they are going to take actions, certain actions that they feel are justified, or is it that they have their own agenda in mind? And it's interesting to me to see people grapple with power and the loss of power and the gaining of power and how they use power. Was that something that you particularly wanted to wrestle with within this trilogy?
Absolutely. Like with this trilogy, like it is more of a dystopian landscape. Um, there have been like terrible things that have happened already. And this is unfortunately the world that these characters have been born into. It's already kind of terrible. It's already very unjust. And they're trying to figure out the best way through that and how to create a better world. Or, as in like the third book, they're constantly talking about fixing things. And I question that a lot as well. So, because how do you fix things, especially when they've been existing in this type of world for so long that fixing things necessitates destroying things at that point. So, yeah, this is this is the question I'm grappling with throughout the series. That's one of them. Also, like there's, the matter of the responsibilities that we have to ourselves and to others, and like how closely must we adhere to those? And if you fail, what does that mean? Like how do you recover from that? Like who owes you forgiveness for that? Do you owe yourself forgiveness? It's a lot of these things. I feel like we are also very human. We are also very flawed. And I'm trying to take these very flawed people and to present them with these problems and see what they do to solve them. Because frankly, in the world that we exist in ourselves, we don't have any perfect person to come in and solve any problems. All we have are flawed people. So, how do you handle that? What is the best way forward, and how do we do that while still taking into account other people's viewpoints and other people's like pain and other people's hopes and dreams? So, yeah, I don't feel like when I'm writing, I'm telling anybody that there is like one correct answer. I'm just like, this is what these people have come up with. If it resonates with you, then it does. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. And I've kind of come to peace with the fact that no matter what I write, no matter what kind of messaging or things that I want people to feel empathy for when I'm putting that into my writing, that I cannot control what people take away from it. There may be things in there that I am like, hey, this person who in our world we would say is terribly flawed, like still is deserving of seeing their humanity. And, somebody may not take that away from that book, and that's okay. I cannot change the world either through my writing. I can only really seek to understand it a little bit better.
Well, I think it gives us all as readers a chance to examine things, and to a certain extent, I do think that every reader has their own distinct experience because every reader has their own unique experiences in life. Like if you think about,
Oh, for sure.
like Rasha is a, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but
No,
uh,
that's very straightforward. Rasha, yes.
yay, that's one. But this is a character who both um touches me, and in the sense of I really feel for her, and at the same time, I'm also really infuriated with her. And so, like, I see both, like it's just one example because, I mean, she was just a girl at the beginning of the first book, just 9 years old, had lost her mama and Mimi. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And her sister, who's only a few years older than her, is tasked with taking care of her and trying to keep her alive. And then they get separated right as restoration is about to happen. And in restoration, 50% of the population disappears and 50% of the population is altered. And Russia is left all by herself, um, on her own to face that, and comes through altered, and then has to deal with trying to survive on her own without her sister, without her family. And so she throws all of her love into a god. Clune, I'm not sure if I say that right either, but
No,
anyway,
you're right. You're
okay.
right.
But Clune, he, you know, it, the she's cared for and she's given purpose and she's um given the basics to survive, and she wants to devote herself to him. And on the one hand, that's very admirable, to be loyal um to those who took care of you when you needed it most. And also, this is all she's ever really known and been taught of what they believe. And yet at the same time, we know all of these other things because we follow other characters and we have other information. And so we see her start to grapple with her faith and her beliefs and how they impact her decisions. And so, that to me, it's a great example of, like, I think as somebody with from a religious background, um, who's considers themselves an ex-evangelical, I relate to that struggle of faith, and it's sometimes I find it really annoying that she hasn't, maybe isn't quite
Yeah, I mean,
responded to me.
I feel like some people are going to be frustrated with her because I think the natural inclination is to think that she should immediately drop the religion, go join her sister, and continue on together working against this God who is doing terrible things. But I don't really see it as that simple. I really don't. I mean, basically, like a lot of the second book is her and her sister kind of grappling with the fact that, like, Hakara had a little bit to do with this as well because she had created this kind of relationship with her sister. And yes, she had the best of intentions. And yes, she was just trying to protect her, but she really never allowed Rasha to develop that kind of independence, So she was completely like just at a loss when she got picked up by this religion because this is basically like all she knew is having this kind of relationship with somebody. And I think that we are very prone to repeating the sorts of relationships that we had in the past. And it's basically like given her everything that she's needed and wanted. She needs to feel like she belongs somewhere. She needs like food, shelter, and all that. So there's a certain amount of like gratitude and also like that loyalty because without them, she would be dead, right? So she feels like she owes them so much. And throughout like the second and the third book, she's also grappling with the fact that like there are people who are, I mean, in this essentially a cult who she cares about. And it's not so easy to just like cut all of those ties and go off on your own. Like it's not just about the faith, it's not just about the religion, it's also about everything surrounding it that has made you feel like you are safe and that you belong. So, yeah, she goes through a lot of struggles, I think from like, but she does come into her own and I would beg people have patience of her because she is going through a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I say I get frustrated by her sometimes. I do understand, because in the sense that, like, when you make a change, when you come to realize that, okay, Clune isn't all he's cracked up to be, and things aren't adding up here and there are problems. There are things that aren't good, flat out, just are bad. Once you start to realize that on a certain level, really accepting that and moving forward from that understanding means unraveling a lot of your own past. It means accounting for a lot
Right.
of decisions that maybe were you thought were right and were wrong, and things that you did that you thought were good were terrible. And so, and she's not the only one who's dealing with that, because Shuan is has had this transition as well, from loyalty to the clan, absolute devotion to trying to save her family clan, to pivoting in a surprising direction at the end of book one as well. And there are, although externally she seems, I think she comes off as being a lot more confident. I think that she also grapples with these things as well, in terms of the decisions she's making and the repercussions of those decisions, and her beliefs and her responsibilities. So I feel like it's not just the sisters who are dealing with this, but like other characters are dealing with this as well on different levels. They're really examining themselves and their own choices, and trying to,
Yeah, trying to figure out like what are their core beliefs, right?
yeah, and well, what is the best way forward? You know,
Yeah.
and what are you willing to give up on, and what are you willing to risk your life for? Seems to be a common theme.
Yeah, yeah, I'm having it's very cathartic for me to be writing like book three right now just because thematically like a lot of it is about that grappling with like mortality and like what you can and cannot change. I feel like as somebody who's like middle-aged, like it's something that I think about a lot, right? Because we start out, I think, teens, early 20s where we're like, we're going to change the world. And then as you get older, you start to realize like there are things that no matter how hard you try and how hard you work at it, like they are just immovable, right? Like we have so much faith that we can like hard work our way out of anything when we're younger. And then as you get older, you kind of have to learn what you can and cannot do. And then also like grappling with the fact about like it's not just about what we experience in our lives, and it's not just about like our periodic flash in the pan glory. Like a lot of it is about like what are we leaving behind? What are our future generations going to experience? And this is a question that all of these characters end up having to grapple with in book three, just because they are all trying to kind of control what restoration is and what restoration means. Uh, and it kind of leads them to some interesting places, I think. So, because a lot of it is like they all want the same basic things, but the future that they see ahead of them and the way that they want to get there is like slightly different, and that can cause like these huge rifts. So, yeah, it's funny because like I sat down to write this and I'm like, how do I bring these disparate groups of people together? Or how do I get them to bring these disparate groups of people together? Which means like I have to figure it out, not just them. So, so it becomes quite the task, but an enjoyable one. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the conclusion is received because I feel like I have a lot to say with the ending there.
Oh, well, if you wanna know, you can send me a copy and I'll let no problem.
Yeah, once it's been through edits and everything, because right now I'm like finding like artifacts from early drafts.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, because you did an interview on Fantasy Hive, and you talk about planning and plotting out the character storylines, and that that you're that's a big part of your process, is planning ahead, and you said yourself you love world building. So I was kind of wondering, like, how much of your process, like how much time do you spend at the beginning of a new trilogy, just world building and working on those arcs? Like, is it weeks,
I
months?
spend a lot of time. I spend like I do spend months on it. I say that I write fast, but I think slow. So it generally takes me like months of planning and just research and just thinking about it, and then I will go ahead and like write down an outline, and then some first pages, sometimes just to get the feel of things. And then inevitably I realize that, like my outline's all wrong. And then I have to go and like fix it. Um, but like one of the things like I've been realizing too, which has helped to alleviate some of the frustration that I have with myself, is that there's so much to hold in your head when you're writing an epic fantasy with multiple points of view, where all of these points of view have to intersect and also like rise and fall together as far as the arcs go. There's so many layers that it's impossible to hold all of those in my head while I am writing. So inevitably something ends up getting dropped, forgotten, the characters end up doing something that doesn't make sense because what made sense to me in the outline no longer makes sense like when I'm living in their experience. So I've come to accept that I have to kind of work on these things in layers. Like I can get the broad strokes in that first draft, but oftentimes I will have to go back and maybe rewrite somebody's arc, or I'll have to go back and like add it back in a subplot that I had planned, but I had forgotten while I was writing it. It's just a lot of it is just accepting that it is going to be an inherently messy process, while at the same time deluding myself into thinking that I'm going to write the perfect first draft this time around so that I'll actually sit down and start writing it. Because otherwise it feels too daunting. There's just the amount of work that goes into it and the number of times that I have to touch those pages and fix them and make them better. I compare it a lot to long distance running. If you just at the starting line, you're thinking like 26.2 miles, my God, that you're just going to psych yourself out. So, so you kind of just have to focus on that one step at a time. Like, okay, what's the first thing that I need to do? Okay, I'll just do 1 mile. And then if I do 1 mile, maybe I can do another after that, and then another one after that. And you just fool yourself into thinking that it's just one more mile. That's what I basically do when I sit down and I write a draft and do all my planning. I'm like, it's just this one next step. And I did that. And can I manage to do the next one? Sure, I can manage to do the next one. So eventually I get there.
Yeah, well, that's a good way of keeping yourself going. I mean, because it is a long haul. And also, once the first book is out, then it's like, oh, I can't go back and change anything or add anything. So
Yeah.
there's that stress of like trying to get it locked down. And I did wonder from your plotting, how much deviates, like specifically in just a random thought. Like, were you always planning to be so shitty to Mullane in book two?
Um, yes, in some ways, because like I feel like I feel so bad. I have a friend who like loves Mullane, and he's like, I hope you're nice to my boy in book two. And I'm like, ah. I mean, he really goes through it, and he doesn't deserve to go through it, I think, in some ways, but he does come out like I think stronger, more intelligent, and like more aware, I think, in the end, because I think Mauline's like a very like good-hearted and kind character, I think, but he's also like it's like he's got blinders on, right? He's like very one-minded. He's very focused, and he's very convinced of his own superiority. And he's that kind of person, if you've ever met, that like they're wonderful, they're great, but like that they have like zero experience outside their very privileged existence. And this is him. This is Mull. So I kind of have to, unfortunately, like drag him through the mud a little bit so like he can understand his position in the world a little bit better, and also everybody else's position a little bit better, because he's lived kind of like a very blessed existence in a lot of ways. yes, he does work hard. Like, yes, he has put himself in danger willingly. But does he understand the plight of people at large? Absolutely not. He does not. He thinks everybody could pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? I mean, this is who he is. So, so yeah, I did always plan to kind of put him through the ringer. As bad as I feel about it, because I do think that like at his heart, he is a kind and generous person. He really is. And I feel this way about like just people in general, where I see people who are in their own privilege and maybe just don't understand that things are very difficult for people nowadays and they just don't see it. But they are kind, they are generous, they're sweet people. It's just yeah, and I would not wish that upon anyone. I would not wish to put them through those situations. However, he is a fictional character. I am trying to move him into the space of getting to where he is at the very end. So generally when I sit down and I start and I think about these character arcs, especially for a trilogy, is I'm like, where do they start? Where do I want them to end by the end of the trilogy? And then I start thinking about, okay, so then what are each of the arcs they need to take for each book to get to that final stage? So when I thought about where I want Maul to finally end up and who I want him to be by the end, there's really no way for him to get there without going through this very intense process because he's not going to be that person if he doesn't have a full understanding of the world that he lives in.
Yes, and he's definitely all I'll say is where I'm at, he's definitely getting an education.
Yeah. Oh, poor guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, but it makes sense. I mean, obviously bad things have to happen, in these stories because that's just part of the landscape, especially in a dystopian type world. I mean, things are not
Yeah.
going to go smoothly and perfectly. So, that's going to be some of that. Now, I have to ask, you did this interview on Mushins Entertainment. I'm not sure if I even say that name right. But anyways, but you were talking about your New Year's Eve plans and how you were going to, stream with some family who weren't there. And you said, thank goodness for technology. And then we have you writing in a world like this, which is kind of in some ways, a post-technological or post-magical, I don't know if that's the right word either, but world. What do you like about writing a world that does not have the technology we have?
Um, I that's so funny because I went and wrote a thriller recently and I was like, thank God they have planes and cell phones. Because it just like made some parts of it so much easier. Um, but I mean, I think that I like to think about magic as technology sometimes too. So if they had this magic, which can also function as a technology, like what would they do with it? How does it affect their lives? How does it change the way that they handle and deal with things? Like what applications is it going to have that maybe some people hadn't thought about? Um, Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Do I enjoy it? I sometimes I don't know. It's funny because I feel like all of the romantic parts of writing in a low technology fantasy world have kind of like done away with a little bit here. Like they don't really get on boats that often. They're not riding horses. I'm terrified of horse people and getting it wrong. So you'll notice a distinct lack of horses in most of what I write, which is funny because I used to be a horse girl, but that just like emphasizes to me again how terrible it would be to get something wrong. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I enjoy the magic aspect. I enjoy creating a magic system and having it in some ways replace technology. But I keep telling myself the next thing that I write, I'm like gonna have some kind of form of instantaneous transportation because dealing with travel times and like, oh God, how long is it gonna take them to get there? And they need to be here at the same time is exhausting.
Yeah, it can be a little complicated. Why not just make up some creature or method of transportation that doesn't exist in the real world so nobody can say you got it wrong?
Yeah, I could do that. I know people like to use dragons for that, right? They fly, they're fast. They're basically the airplanes of the fantasy world. Portals, people or waypoints. I know they use those a lot in fantasy books. I don't know why I haven't yet. I probably should think about that.
Well, you do have a lot of boats in the first series.
I do have a lot of boats. Oh, and then I cheated a little too, right? Because then they can use magic to make them go faster. So,
Yes,
uh,
but then you also, like every good author, uh, um, made there be consequences for using that one.
yes, there were very terrible consequences for that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and that's always the but that's the interesting balance because I think like magic can feel too simple sometimes as a solution to things. And so
yeah,
I do appreciate the fact that there are consequences to
right.
like in this series there are consequences to the gods using magic. There are
Yeah,
consequences.
there always has to be, because otherwise everybody starts to wonder, well, why didn't they just fix this with magic? So,
Yeah, so you do find yourself wondering about that. So in book two, you introduced a new point of view character. So I wondered how that was for you to step into that mindset coming into the second book.
that was something that I always intended, actually. Like structurally, what I wanted was for there to be those four main viewpoints, and then there would be a fifth one, which would take place in the past. Because what I wanted to do was, as we're moving forward in our normal timeline with those four main characters, in that fifth one, I wanted to be moving further and further into the past to kind of show how we got to this kind of situation. Um, so yeah, so I think it made sense for it to be Nuanan in book one, and then in book two, we get Lithwis's point of view, and we get to see how she ended up in that situation, because this part of like how they got here is because of her need for change, right? And I think like in some ways, in modern terminology, we would say she's like an accelerationist. So she like something's got to change, so let's just help it along. Um, so that was kind of fun to explore in the sense that like she got what she wanted in a lot of ways, and then in a lot of the ways like she became trapped by what she wanted. So yeah, I had a lot of I really did enjoy stepping into that mindset, and then also kind of showing people a little bit more about like what the past looked like and what those conflicts were like and what they were dealing with then and why it might have seemed like a good idea at the time to do what she did. Because you can look forward and you can think about like possible consequences, but I feel like a lot of the times we're not fully cognizant of those until they start happening to us. So it's very much her character. And then in the third book, we get to step further back into the past. So that's fun. I'm looking forward to sharing that as well.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to seeing what you have in store there. So, uh, you know, for some fun questions, there are five different types of altered. There's winged, scaled, horned, woodrock, and furred.
Hmm.
Kind of altered would you be?
Oh gosh, I'd want to say I had wings. It's like that seems like the best one. Um, but I feel like I would probably be like this. weird squat wooden skin thing in a corner. I don't know. I just mm, I just get by being kind of like a tank. Yeah, probably.
So you think you'd be the wood rock then?
Yeah, I do. I do, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always play a tank in like RPGs, so I think it would make sense.
Okay. Well, maybe there's
That or like a druid. It's like one of the two. So I think that one would make the most sense for sure.
so sticking with the oddball questions here. Um, so would you rather dive for abalone or go into the sinkholes for god gems?
Oh gosh. Probably dive for abalone. I've actually always wanted to do that. I'm a very good swimmer. And I can hold my breath for a while. You actually can do that here in California. You have to get a permit and everything. You can only take a certain amount, and you cannot have any assisted breathing devices. So basically, people just go out in their wetsuit and fins, and then they'll take their little abalone knife and go dive for abalone. Um, so I'd probably rather do that, especially because I thought about doing it in real life. So.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that I would I'd want to drop into a sinkhole myself. But then also almost drowned when I was a kid. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
option is,
Understandable, understandable.
but on that note, like I mean, both of your series have dealt with environmental issues. How deliberate is that for you? Is that something that's on the
Oh,
forefront?
it's very deliberate. It's something that obviously I'm constantly thinking about. It's hard not to when you step outside and you're like, oh, it's a lot warmer than it's supposed to be this time of year. Um, I mean, it's been a concern of mine since I was a kid. I've always been very like cognizant of the fact that we are living on this earth and we need to live in a way that is not destroying the place that we're living on. I feel like sometimes there's this sense of, oh, well, we could just go into space. And I'm like, have you seen space? Like it's like I mean, the gap between what it looks like out there and what it looks like down here is extremely large. It's incomprehensibly large. So, yeah, I find it baffling sometimes that we live here and yet we cannot seem to stop from kind of destroying a lot of it, which I'm like, who would do that? You live in your house. What are you gonna do? Like, I mean, it's like somebody who's living in their house and they're putting holes in the walls, like, and just ripping up the carpet and not renovating it, just just taking it apart piece by piece. So yeah, I do. I think a lot about that, how this drive for resources and to have like new things and capitalism and all that is basically pushing us to putting ourselves into this very difficult situation. And we can see it happening and we know it's happening, but there are all these pressures that are just pushing us forward off this cliff. So, yes, it's extremely deliberate.
Yeah, these artificial man-made pressures of, I must earn more than the people next door so that I can have all the new shiny things, right? Like it's
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like even larger than that. Like, I think a lot of it is based around corporate interests and how corporate interests are always going to be driving toward creating the most amount of profit. And if that's the only thing that you're driving toward, and there's nothing, like there's very few guardrails, then we're going to naturally end up in this kind of place because there's not a lot of thinking toward the far future. It's about like these more immediate rewards. And when you're thinking that way, like of course, you're not gonna think about keeping the environment like clean and, a place that we can all live, then you're going to be driving toward increasing your like shareholder values and stuff. So it's just, of course, that's like a lot more complicated than what I have in my books, but I feel like it's the same kind of driving forces in a lot of ways where they are accustomed to things being a certain way. And there's nothing that's really stopping them from from like changing or putting a check on their own behavior. So,
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a lack of consideration of the consequences. But then on the flip side, when you get to somebody who is older than dirt, perhaps, or maybe not quite, but close, right? There's that complacency. There's that almost I've lived too long. I've seen so much. Nothing changes. Like,
mhm.
I mean, not that things don't change, but that at the core, in terms of how people behave, that doesn't change. And so it's interesting to look at that side of the coin as well. It's one of the things I like about having the gods' perspectives woven into the books, because you are sort of seeing that, like we sometimes think like, oh, if we just had unlimited time, what we could do. Would we have the same drive if we didn't have a deadline on us? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, having that deadline on us enables a lot of people to not care about what they leave behind. And legacy
Yeah,
really,
absolutely. That's I yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of that. Yes, I say like, okay, so maybe I can't change people's minds, but at the same time, maybe, what I have written reaches somebody in some way and that still matters, you know? It's like I feel like there's this kind of feeling of if I can't do everything and change everything at once, then it's not worth it. While making small changes still is worth it in a lot of ways, and to a lot of people, because sure, like maybe you'll only like save one person or two people or whatever, but like it matters. It matters to those people. It absolutely does. So you may not save everybody all at once by whatever action you're partaking in, but there is like this accumulative factor of if more people are trying to move things in a positive direction, no matter how small or incremental, that there's like that sea change, right? It does make a difference. And I think like you need to maintain this kind of feeling of like we're not going to lose hope because it's very easy to just throw up your hands and say, well, I can't change anything, while at the same time acknowledging that you can't change everything.
yeah. But you're also like talking about legacy, because you're leaving a writing legacy of books that are showing that you see what's happening in the world around you, and you're approaching it differently, obviously through the lens of fantasy. But I think it I think it's encouraging and heartening to those people who do care about the world and the state of the world, and what we're leaving. It's encouraging to see that there are other people who see this. And even if it doesn't necessarily give us literal answers for how we can solve problems, we get to grapple with some of those issues through the characters in their own different ways. So that's something that I've always appreciated from both series, that there is that.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to know that like somebody gets it, right? I feel like I appreciate whatever people take away from the books because, obviously I wouldn't be doing this for a job if people weren't reading them and taking something away from it. At the same time, like there's something very wonderful to feel like you're connecting in a specific way where it's like this is how it feels to me and then you're saying it feels the same way to you. Like that, like absolutely this is like why I write books, right? So
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that you always hope that people will take away, and you just never know. But I mean, always when I go into your books, it makes me think about a lot of contemporary issues. And but I won't dive into all of those today. I know that I've taken up so much of your time, but I did want to ask you because you are moving into thriller writing territory. You have a thriller called Paper Dolls that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure when, but I
Oh,
was
it's
wondering,
February 2027 is when it's slated for.
okay, February 2027. So you're going to move into the thriller genre with Paper Dolls, and I was wondering, why thrillers, and what can you tell us about it?
I'm so I read quite widely, so I definitely I enjoy reading thrillers and I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to write something shorter. So, and then I had this idea that just popped into my head because I'm very active on social media, and the way that we interact with social media and with one another there changes a lot of the ways that we interact in general. And then I was thinking a lot about the family influencers and what it must be like to grow up in that kind of family and how it changes the way that you think and how you perceive other people as well as how you perceive yourself because you're always being seen through this lens in a way. So I really wanted to kind of explore those ideas there. So that's when I started writing this thriller because I feel like it must be such a strange experience. And this character has grown up in this family of influencers and has broken away from them, but then has to go back because her sister may be in danger. And seeing her life through this lens of now I'm older and I'm away from it. There's this perspective that is very different because it kind of goes back and forth between what she experienced in the past and what she's experiencing now and how she perceives it differently and how she's still kind of caught in certain patterns of behavior. Um, so yeah, so it was really fun. It was really interesting to kind of delve into. I did a lot of research. A lot of it was fairly depressing. Don't put your kids online. Um, that's all I have to say. Don't do it. It's a terrible idea. Um, but yeah, so that's I'm kind of delving into some similar ideas too in the next thriller that I'm working on as far as how current day technology kind of interacts with the way that we live our lives and how it changes certain things. Um, yeah, the next one I have is somebody that donates a spare embryo to their friend and then their friend basically jets, right? And there's a murder, there's all these issues that spring out of this. But yeah, it's an interesting space to me, and I'm excited to explore it.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to see what you've got in store for us because, well, I have a thriller background, so I'm definitely going to be picking up those books when they come out. So just to wrap things up, I wanted to ask, you're a spouse, you're a mom, you're an author, and you're a writing coach. So in the 3.2 seconds that you have of free time every week, what does pure indulgent Andrea time look like? How do you take care of
I
yourself?
don't even know. I mean, it's funny because what I really like doing is just sitting back and eating chocolate and reading. But the reading is work too, anyway. So, so it's mm, um, yeah. I don't think that I do anything right now that's pure indulgence. I'm trying to think of if there's anything that's it. This is the thing, right? When you make your hobby or what you love your job, then you're doing your job all the time. But I can't say that I can't say that I don't feel like I'm relaxing either. Um, there are some times where I will just take a few days off and I'll just play The Sims. I'll do that, which is fun. But admittedly, I generally I get pretty bored after a few days. I can't do it anymore. But yeah, I like having my fake little people and having them live their fake little lives. It's funny though, because each time that I play The Sims, I'm like, oh, there's like all these fun things that they can do. Like, oh, they can go on vacation or they can go like hunt through the neighborhood for all these different like little collectibles. Inevitably, I always make them like climb to the top of their career track as fast as possible. Like, have like their 2.5 children and then they die and I'm like, what did I just do? So,
We,
yeah.
we won't psychoanalyze that at all.
Yeah, not at all, not at all.
Well, it's been wonderful getting a chance to chat with you about the series and the new books and the thrillers that you have in store. I'm so excited to see what you have for us in the next few years. It's going to be fantastic. So
I'm
thank
looking forward to it too. Hopefully I write a good second thriller. I mean, I've been planning it, but hopefully it pans out.
you. I have confidence in you. So but I know it's daunting to move into a new genre. So there's all the nerves that go with that as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like debuting again is what it feels like right now.
And it is to a certain extent, but I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited to see what you've got for us. So thank you so much for chatting today.
Thanks for having me on, Sandra. It was a really great chat.
I really hope that people pick up the series. If they haven't read book one, The Gods Below is out already available, and The War Beyond is out November 4th.